Morning, friends. I say good morning to those on the West Coast here, but good day and welcome. Good afternoon, good evening to people signing in from all over. Say good morning to those on the West Coast here. And I see some friends. Good morning, Richard and Cindy and many others, friends old and new. Julie, good morning and thank you for your support. Lovely to see everybody checking in, greeting one another. And it's 7 here on the West Coast, so we'll get underway. And before we sit together, I'll introduce a theme for the week, sort of following on and inspired by Kim's theme last week, which she shared with me the other day. A theme I'm going to call the 5 knowledges or the 5 understandings. And I thought to myself this morning, oh, that's kind of a technical sounding thing. And it's too late probably now to change it with the people who title the week's talks. But I think I want to call it the Buddha's smile. I don't know if you've noticed this. You probably have. But Buddhist statues, like this one here, very frequently show the Buddha with a smile, sort of a mysterious, you could say, Mona Lisa smile. And I've always kind of been curious about that smile. And I think this week we can explore aspects of the meditation, 5 in number, that arise as part of the meditation practice that bring sort of an inward contentment, and with it sometimes an inward smile, and sometimes a smile that is expressed on our faces or in our spirit, both in the meditation and through the day. So I'll say more about the theme, its 5 understandings or 5 knowledges as we go. The first one of them, I'm going to call something like the cultivating the pleasant and even the pleasure in the meditation. So let's sit, bring our attention inward and downward, maybe closing the eyes if that feels comfortable, bringing the eyes into a relaxed sort of middle distance if one wants to keep them open and let some light in. And what we'll bring our attention to as we settle in, as we make contact with the breathing, with the body, with whatever object of meditation we take as our first connection with the here and now of our experience. We can bring our attention to the pleasant in the meditation. It can feel quite easeful, bring us to rest, bring us to ground, can center us and ground us, this meditation practice and this bringing of the attention, directing the attention inward, downward. Sometimes we characterize the meditation, its qualities, and perhaps its objective as ease or easeful. And even if it's incremental, marginal, even if it's just greater ease for this moment, greater ease than when the mind is busy planning, remembering, fretting, thinking about other people, thinking about ourselves, casting itself into the future, looking into the past again, all useful qualities of mind, none of which we seek to stamp out or root out. As we cultivate an inner calm and peace and ease, and maybe today we can connect in this ease, even if it's just a greater ease. We can notice that it's pleasant and even that it's pleasurable. And this is a deep aspect of this practice, that this pleasure that comes in the meditation isn't to be feared. And the Buddha encourages us throughout the texts on which we base our practice to cultivate this pleasure, this pleasantness, this pleasure of the meditation practice isn't to be feared, but rather to be cultivated. Why? Because it's an uncomplicated, simple pleasure. It's not sticky. It doesn't entangle us. It doesn't rest on external conditions. It rises from within. And it's a deep knowledge, a deep knowing, a deep understanding that comes with the cultivation of the meditation practice. That this contentment, this ease, this is wholesome. It leads onward. It points toward freedom. We can trust it. We can rest in it. As we do so, as we rest in it, as we become comfortable with it, it becomes stronger. This is how it's cultivated. So just rest easy in this today. Whatever pleasantness comes, whatever ease comes, it's part of the path. It supports our practice. It has benefits now, in this moment, provides a pleasant abiding in the here and now, and it bears fruit in the future. So, as we rest in the meditation, and pretty much no matter what's happening in the meditation, whether the mind is busy and preoccupied with the day to come or the day past, we can seek out any greater ease that comes with the meditation and enjoy it fully. Confident in the knowing that this pleasantness of the ease is wholesome, and that in addition to providing a benefit for us personally in the here and now of the meditation, that cultivating it results in skillful action and benefit to others. So we can bring the meditation to a close with this idea that we cultivate the meditation for our own benefit, and we share that benefit. The ease we find in the meditation, the pleasantness, the pleasure even, provide a quietness in the mind that is useful to us as we meet the world, meet others in it. So let's share the benefits of our practice, confident in the knowing that far from depleting the benefits to ourselves, when we share the benefits of the practice, it increases the benefit for all beings. May all beings benefit from this ease. May all beings know this ease for themselves. May all beings be free. Welcome again, everyone. Good morning. I hope you're well. Good afternoon, good evening, if those are the appropriate salutations where you are. And I'd like to devote the teaching this week to sort of an unusual and obscure teaching that comes through one of the more obscure texts that undergird our practice, that refers to something called the five knowledges or the five understandings. And as I said at the outset today, that seemed to me, as I reflected this morning, sort of a technical designation. And so I also want to think of the teachings this week as being about the Buddha's smile. When we see representations of the Buddha, here's one here, for example. Here's another on the, I guess that would be the far right of our screens, of the Buddha resting, preparing for his final freedom, his paranibbana. The Buddha has a smile, gentle Mona Lisa smile that plays on his features. And perhaps the smile comes from understandings that grow with the meditation practice. And in this text from which I draw these teachings, and I'm going to quote with some liberties taken with the Pali, the Buddha encourages us to develop the meditation and saying, develop your meditation practice, deepen your meditation practice. And as your practice deepens, and this isn't an encouragement, it's a statement of fact, that as the meditation practice deepens, there will be 5 knowings, understandings, knowledges, if we have to give it a noun, that will arise naturally as part of the practice. Those gathered to hear this teaching ask, what 5? And 5 are shared. And I'll share them in turn this week. But the first one is this, and again, here I'm working with the language to express it in a way that I think is useful for us today. I mean, here today. It says this meditation is pleasant and pleasurable now, and it results in benefit in the future. So let's unpack that a little bit in the next few minutes. And before sort of getting into the specific idea of the pleasure of the meditation and cultivating it instead of fearing it, there's an important use of words right here in the beginning, that as our meditation practice deepens, these understandings arise all by themselves and for ourselves. So this is the mechanism by which, or one of the mechanisms by which, these teachings come to us from the meditation practice, from our own experience, from our own internal meeting of our experience, instead of something that is comes from outside through a teacher, through a reading. This is a reminder that the meditation practice is primary and that we can trust it to provide all the teaching we need. And it's useful to have guidance. That's why we're here in part today, together, right, with spiritual friends, with companions in the path, and with teachers. And yet the injunction here, the encouragement here, is to pay attention to what happens naturally, what arises naturally in each of our experiences in the meditation itself. So this idea of a pleasant abiding now with beneficial results in the future runs throughout the teachings about the meditation. That it's not only something that's pleasurable and even blissful in the meditation, but something that has future benefits as well. Let's focus on each of these two briefly. The idea that the meditation is pleasant and even pleasurable, other teachers introduce with a certain hesitance, because we sometimes are afraid of pleasure, that we sometimes are not sure how it fits into the practice, how it becomes or can be part of the path of practice. And there can be a shying away from some of the pleasant that arises in meditation. I laugh because, a lot of times we look for trouble in the meditation. We're like, yeah, here's this difficult thing arising. Here's this difficult thing arising. We look for the suffering. Suffering comes to our attention as is natural and as it should. And yet, there's also in the pleasantness of the meditation, there's also path. In other words, sure, understanding suffering and its arising is critical to having a path away from suffering. Knowing the pleasure of meditation, the pleasantness of the ease of mind, the openness of mind, the collectedness of mind that develops in the meditation as it deepens, this too is part of the path. And just to make sure that it doesn't sound like it's just me saying that, I want to quote the Buddha, who says in several places, but in one particular discourse that I love, says, this pleasure, this ease of meditation, I call the pleasure of letting go, the pleasure of separating ourselves from the world of mental activity in regular daily life, the pleasure of seclusion, the pleasure of peace, pleasure of the meditation, the pleasure of being awake in the world. And then such pleasure should be cultivated and developed and should not be feared. This is very strong encouragement. And in providing this encouragement, the Buddha is basing it on his own experience of becoming awake. Many of you probably know this story, but the Buddha, after years of seeking different paths, working with different teachers, to, in particular, that we know of, among other practices, does a lot of practices of asceticism, privation, starvation, living with very few clothes, being open, living without shelter, living with very little food. And eventually realizes that none of these practices seem to lead toward the freedom that he seeks. And one day, sitting under a rose apple tree, he falls into a deep meditative state of the sort that we cultivate in our practice. And he realizes, this pleasure that comes with the meditation, it's not dependent on external conditions. It arises from within. It can be trusted. And it leads toward freedom. It's part of the path. And there's a bunch of reasons why this might be so, but I'll just give you one, since our time is short. This is so in part because our brains and our bodies are very oriented towards pleasure for good reasons and reasons that sometimes complicate our lives. And if we can find and develop in our meditation practice pleasures that are wholesome, pleasures that bear fruit in skillful action in the world, those can be cultivated safely. And the beauty of the pleasantness, the pleasure, the ease that come with the meditation is that if we bring it to attention and if we rest in it, we can see, we can understand. It's a knowledge, it's a knowing that arises from within the meditation itself. We can understand that it's not sticky. It doesn't have the complications and entanglements that other pleasures sometimes do. You'll notice, for example, that although it's very pleasant, we don't want more of it in quite the same way that we want more chocolate or more, 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 more peak experiences of various kinds. Let me put it that way, to cover a broad range of activities, behaviors, substances, and the like. And so that knowing, going, this pleasantness of mind, of body, this restfulness, this groundedness, this centeredness, this collectedness of mind, this stillness of mind with a feeling of well-being, this can be trusted. This is part of the path. This does seem to lead toward greater stillness, greater ease. The more it's rested in, and the more it's thus cultivated, the more it leads onward toward the sort of ultimate peace, the ultimate freedom of this path. So in a way, that's the pleasant abiding in the here and now that this phrase speaks of. A pleasant abiding here that produces, yields, maybe is better, yields, gives way to, yields beneficial results in the future. And this is where I think, as at the end of the guided meditation, we can also understand the wholesomeness of this pleasantness in the meditation. It's an interesting thing that if in the meditation practice, if in our practice more broadly, we find ease, we find stillness, we find pleasure, we find pleasantness, we're a greater ease in the world of interactions with other beings, perhaps in particular. We are not seeking the same kinds of externally conditioned pleasures, satisfactions. And it makes it much more likely that when we interact with people, we can do so in a way that's free of clinging, that's free of attachment, that's free of projection, that's free of suffering. one thing I think is important about this teaching is that important, useful, inspiring, is that it doesn't encourage us to do anything except for, as it says in the opening encouragement, deepen our meditation practice. Keep going back to the meditation practice and notice what arises naturally in the meditation. What can be the knowledges that arise without us having to seek them? If we pay attention, we can notice, oh, this feels good now, and it seems to have benefit later. And it doesn't suggest that it's linear or that we have to pay attention to that. We can trust that it has good effects later. It can be really useful to notice how that's so, but we don't have to do anything except notice. You may notice that after, and I think this is true for a lot of us here, after meditating for half an hour on a regular basis in the mornings with Gil, with other wonderful teachers, my colleagues, in supporting Gil in this way, that the day's easier and our interactions are, I say easier, I mean more easeful. They may not be easier, but they may have greater ease in them. And it is always the case, it's axiomatic, at least in this practice, that it's always going to be more skillful to act with some peace of mind than not. So we don't have to go looking for, oh, I meditated this morning and then, I was my speech with this, my interaction with this person involved more skillful speech. Maybe useful to notice that, but we can trust that the meditation produces that effect without our having to do very much at all, except return to the meditation and watch what it teaches us. So I'll leave you with that thought. Just watch what arises naturally as a knowledge, as a knowing, as a deep understanding in the meditation, and trust that. And if it's pleasant or pleasurable, trust that. Know that that's part of the path, that it provides a pleasant abiding in the here and now, and that it results in beneficial action and beneficial interaction in the future. So thank you all. Appreciate you being here together, supporting one another in our practice. And I'll see you tomorrow morning. Take care.